with this tremendous pressure of the crowd on the stage and on their motorcycles. Motorcycles getting tipped over and people being just crazy. This wasn't your normal park crowd. This wasn't a crowd that was used to going to taking LSD and being friendly at a show and enjoying the outdoors and the free music. This was a rowdy bunch of dependents.
Hey man, I'd like to mention that the Hells Angels just smashed Marty Ballin in the face and knocked him out for a bit. I'd like to thank you for that.
Son, you're talking to me, I'm going to talk to you.
I'm not talking to you, man. I'm talking to the people that hit my lead singer in the head.
You're talking to my people.
Right.
Now let me tell you what's happening.
Man,
what's happening? No! We're partying like you. Hey.
So anyway, eventually it gets dark and the Stones go on. And that's when it really got weird, you know. And that's when like the stabbing happened and all this shit happened.
The Grateful Dead arrived at Altamont as the ugly scenes around the stage threatened to spiral out of control. After being briefed on events, the band decided to abandon their appearance.
Oh, that's what the story is here?
Yeah.
Oh, bummer.
Really, yeah. I mean, like, it's scary.
Who's doing all the beating?
Hells Angels.
Hells Angels are doing beating on musicians?
Marty got beat up.
We wanted no more part of it, and it would just delay the Stones going on. The idea was to get them on as quick as possible. It was getting dark.
I mean, really, the light and everything, it was just so weird. It was just the weirdest thing. The light was this kind of baleful, red, kind of dusk, you know, kind of particulate air, you know, there's kind of like the thing of like piles of smoking tires, you know, maybe fire, you know, like little fire, you know, it's like, it's the smell of sulfur, you know, it was, geez, it was horrible. I mean, it was so hellish.
We felt that it would not have done any good for us to play, and it would only have prolonged the agony. Unfortunately, the Rolling Stones apparently were waiting for sundown so they could make a film.
But when the Stones began to play, Altamont pitched into mortal crisis, and assault turned to murder. 18-year-old Meredith Hunter drew a revolver in the vicinity of the stage and was stabbed to death by the Hells Angels.
And he pulled out a gun.
He did?
Yes, the Hells Angels took the gun away from him. One of them has it now, he showed it to me. And they proceeded to put him down on the ground and start kicking him. And he has a couple stab wounds in his back and one over his ear here.
But I can't hear his heart.
Now, don't worry about it.
A couple of people got run over in their sleeping bags. No, it was a nightmare. We had another gig to go play in the city. So I got them out and got them over to the city. I was like sort of the last guy out, but I got back to the city in time to get yelled at by Bill Graham. Called me a murderer. And I got called a murderer in the press. I ran away from San Francisco for about a month.
As far as I was concerned, and many others of us, Altamont represented the end of an era. Yes, an end of innocence, perhaps, but more than that, the end of a certain kind of era.
Like, hey, it isn't all, you know, peace and love. There are a lot of people out there that are not interested in that.
The times they were a-changing. It was clear that, it was clear even before Altamont that, in fact, way back in '67 in the so-called Summer of Love, that it couldn't continue the way it was.
There was a sense that the excesses of what the 60s were somehow had contributed to what Altamont was. You know, you get to see, you know, the Rolling Stones doing Beggar's Banquet, you know, the Grateful Dead doing Working Man's Dead. You know, you get the band coming in with, you know, music from Big Pink. You get Dylan doing John Wesley Harding. These records that are almost penitent in a way, that are really self-explorations about, you know, really I think the question they ask is, you know, did we do this? Did all of these, you know, the assassinations and the violence and all of the problems, did we contribute to that in some way through our passivity, through our indifference, through our, you know, little trippy frolicking while all these serious things are going on? Did we allow that to happen? Are we morally culpable? I think those questions were all being asked on those records.
and those questioned were representative of a sea change in American music at the end of the 1960s. The turn of the decade had seen a retreat from the psychedelic experiments and big studio productions of the past, and a turn towards simpler acoustic forms. The Grateful Dead caught the shifting winds. The band moved into the 70s, having left the sounds and colours of the hate behind, and began to look back to the folk tapestries and country landscapes of their roots. The albums that followed, Working Man's Dead and American Beauty, would bring the band both widespread critical acclaim and, for the first time in their history, commercial success. It was a platform from which the Dead were elevated to the next stage in their career.
The Grateful Dead were never opposed to being successful. It wasn't always a priority. To make a record that the label wanted was not a priority. You know, there's a running joke in the Grateful Dead. We were always willing to sell out. Nobody was buying.
San Francisco had closed out the decade with the embers of its scene passing into the realm of myth and memory. But as the living embodiment of all its 60s promise, the Dead went on to become one of the world's most successful touring acts. By the mid-70s, they had come to be seen as an experience, an essential reference point for those looking to capture the sound and spirit of the hate. Trailed by a fanatical army of followers known as Deadheads, the band had transfigured into a musical and cultural juggernaut.
10 years of probably the best live music you could ever hear in the United States, live electronic rock band music. The Dead were brilliant all through the 70s. Garcia was just incredibly good. Creatively, the shows were wonderful. There was enough material now that they could play 15 nights and not repeat themselves except 3 or 4 or 5 songs. They had a big book at this point. They expanded their abilities and their crowd and their following hundreds of folds.
I think the Grateful Dead made really, really interesting and worthwhile and important music for a good 15, 20 years, and demonstrated a different way of being, both in the music business and in the world. If nothing else, they left behind a really, really cool songbook, and the songs will endure. It sort of became cant among the Grateful Dead fans that their studio albums weren't very good. Well, that's bullshit. A lot of their studio albums are really good, and the songs on them are really good.
It's all a matter of stunning sequences of ironies. They achieved massive financial and cultural success by doing everything wrong by the industry's standards. And because they stuck to their guns and just did what they wanted to do, they succeeded. Integrity sells. God help us.
Grateful Dead were prime exemplars of riders at the crest of a wave that hit in the early 60s and took a couple of years to really develop and turn into something special. All these tidal forces, ideas coming together, people coming together, reaching critical mass and overflowing in this waterfall of brilliant creativity. Not just the Grateful Dead, the Jefferson Airplane, Quicksilver, Big Brother. It was a golden age of music, and we enjoyed looking at each other over our shoulders. I think the effect of the live music on people endures even today. That's why we didn't care about the record company. We connected directly with the people.